Hey everybody, this is Mang. I'm going to make an intro video to raiding on EverQuest P99 for new castle raiders. I really just want to cover the basic zones that we play in to try and help familiarize people with where we go and what we fight. So right off the bat, I'm not going to play on P99, I'm going to play on an interesting hole, which is a Discord server and test server that you log into instead of P99 that gives you access to GM commands and lets you do crazy stuff without having any sort of risk involved. You can put on best in slot gear, and you can have consumables with infinite charges, and you can practice all kinds of crazy stuff. So I rolled a rogue. I'm probably going to do an intro rogue guide as well for hide sneak and disciplines and how to drag corpses safely and that kind of stuff. But right now I want to do a location tour. So the other thing I'm going to use is NParse maps. This is a third-party add-on / log reader that whenever you're in a zone and you press lock, it will ping your map and pin. So there are maps drawn for every zone, and you can overlay this on your EQ like this, though I have it on a second monitor. Whenever you /lock, it updates a little circle with where you are. So basically, if you spam lock while you're playing, it can tell you where you are. In fact, it can also tell you where your guildmates are. There's a function that makes other people's circles show up too. I think there's also a zliz map. I think PigParse has a map built into it, but I use NParse maps. And this is going to help, hopefully, orient people with where we're going when we do stuff. So, I guess the first thing I want to show is Awakening Lands and Kael, because that's where a lot of the easiest raid content we do is. I'm going to buff myself up here, and we're going to go to Awakening Lands. This is where you port in for Awakening Lands, and you'll notice right here there is a dragon named Woshi, and I'm currently CoV factioned, Claws of Ishan, so Woshi Khan's ally to me. But you'll notice that I can hit Hail Woshi, and even if I'm in the box here, I can still say Hail Woshi, which means the dragon has line of sight on me, right? If you zone in to Awakening Lands not CoV factioned while Woshi's up, you dead. Woshi will kill you immediately. So Woshi needs to be down, or you need to be CoV factioned, or it needs to be harmonied. And so on a Quake, we will intentionally have someone assigned to Harmony Woshi. So here we are. We're in this little south bump in Awakening Lands, and Woshi sits here right next to the rings. So in order to get to Kael, you would run north a little bit, and then turn northeast. We're going to Kael, which is this northeast side. You can also evac. If you were to evac from a druid or a wizard, you would show up right here at the zone in to Kael. Right? There are giants that guard the front door that you can just run past really quick. You could invis past them too, but if you happen to get aggro on these guys, you can just run quickly. Hopefully you have a Spirit of the Wolf or J-Boots or something, and once you zone into Kael, you'll drop them far away enough that you don't train anybody. So, you zone into Kael, and Kael is an important hangout and raid area for a lot of things. So this is the entrance to Kael. There's a giant over here. If you don't go past this lip right here, that giant will never aggro you. Right? If you go up too far, the giant might aggro you, and that's annoying, but he's not a super strong giant anyways. He's light blue Khan, doesn't even exist in P99. He paths back, but he never goes any farther than that. So this is a relatively safe area. In fact, you can bind here you can be bound here as a melee. This is considered like a safe town, essentially. And if you're Kael faction with the giants, there's even a bank in the center of the zone. So Kael is legitimately a town. It's the town of the giants. We also pull several raid targets here. We fight Vindi, KDT, Fajoker, King Tormax, Statue AOW. We pull basically all of them to the zone line right here and fight them here. We also pull faction pulls, which are a set of like 10, 12 giants that we kill here at the zone line. They're not very strong, but for some reason they have a lot of HP, and they give you a bunch of Claws of Ishan faction. Faction pulls in Kael is how you fix that faction for Woshi that I just mentioned before, and how you fix the faction for like a lot of the dragons in Western Wastes and Temple of Ishan. Being CoV factioned is a big deal for a lot of reasons to help facilitate your raiding, and I'll be mentioning in a lot of situations, you can only do so-and-so if you're factioned. And when we talk about factioned, sometimes we're talking about giant factioned, but almost always we're talking about CoV dragon factioned. Alright, so that's it for Kael. Last thing I wanted to talk about in Awakening Lands is the PoG tree. Alright, so we're at the very eastern edge of the Awakening Lands. There is a pond here. It's west, slightly northwest of Kael, and this is how you get to Tunair, the plane of growth. This is what the PoG tree looks like. You have to climb up this little circular tower. There are, what are they called? Like unicorns and fawns guarding it, so you either need to be invis or you need to be faction with Tunair. You should be careful running up here. Speaking of invis, you absolutely must be invisible or know that you're factioned with Tunair before you click this. This funny brainstem thing is a teleporter, and when you click on it, you enter the plane of growth. The plane of growth is cool and awesome for those who are factioned, and terrifying for everybody who's not factioned. Immediately when you zone in, there are wolves and unicorns that are very close to aggroing you, if not immediately ready to aggro you. Fortunately, I am currently Tunair factioned on this AIH rogue character I rolled. But the kicker is that there are two monsters called the Protectors of Growth, the PoGs, that have zone-wide aggro range. So if you zone in and you aren't already invis, they are coming to find you. Now when we fight Takish, and eventually fight Tunair, the very first thing we do is you are invised before you zone into PoG tree, and you run to the southwest corner, which we call the armpit, or the elbow. Way up here is where we pull Takish from Takish House. You need to be invis, and you should only drop invis when the raid is here, and like multiple people, because a PoG is not a weak monster. Alright, so that's Plane of Growth. We're going to move on to getting to Temple of Ishan. And getting to Temple of Ishan starts at Cobalt Scar, teleporting rings. And there are wyverns that are nearby. Sometimes they're pretty close to the rings here. People are often killing them. They are on CoV faction. So if you haven't done enough faction pulls, a lot of these monsters are immediately right around you can be KOS to you. The plan here is to go all the way to the northwest. There's a tunnel on the wall here. So you're running over the sea, and you're trying to get up towards Siren's Grotto. It takes a minute. You'll see this big line of rock, and you'll notice that there are no ice caps. No ice caps, no ice caps. Ah, there's a white triangle. This white triangle is a nice visual guide that the tunnel is underwater directly down and to the right of it. And when you look underwater, here's some siren enticers, and then there is the tunnel you're looking for. So you swim into this tunnel, and we're going into Siren's Grotto. Siren's Grotto is another zone that is terrifying. You are by default KOS to these Bulthars, and if you hide behind this wall here, you see how he doesn't have line of sight of me. But if I scoot just a little to the left, he's going to be ready to attack me. They con KOS. You could hide sneak. Most people get an evac across Siren's Grotto. An evac happens to put you, oh, by the way, let's hit a /lock here. You start here. It's very hard to explain this zone. It's a weird three-dimensional swimming zone. Evac puts you at the zone out to Western Wastes, coincidentally. So basically, you zone from this side and get evac'd to the exit. And anyways, so this is where evac lands you at this junction up near the top. And this long hallway is the wrong way. This brings you back into the zone. And then this double fork here, you want the left path, and then you want to zone out into West Wastes. And that's how you get through Siren's Grotto. I could show you how to hide sneak it, but that's kind of rogue specific. There are also some crazy DA, Divine Aura tricks to invincibility your way through the zone. You should be very familiar with the zone before you try any of that. And Western Wastes is a huge icy zone. You start in the very southeast corner like this. And the goal here is to get to Temple of Ishan, which is right in the center of this big scar. There's also Dragon's Necropolis to go to Zlandikar or do a Vanicki in this medium, the middle scar. I'm not really going to talk about how to get there, but that's sort of on the way. Western Wastes is crawling with dragons, and ice burrowers and other dangerous things. And Invis works for a bunch of the mobs, but not all of them. And again, if you have Claws of Ishan faction, then a lot of the dragons won't attack you, and that is awesome and helpful. So you're going to be running up here. You probably want a Lev and an Invis. You want to cross over the DN Scar and head towards the ToV Scar, and you'll notice that there are some high-level dragons that are on CoV faction that you should be concerned about. If I warp to the Western Waste Scar up here, this is where the Six Necks are. So here's, Duracinol and Eilish is over here, and then here is Temple of Ishan, this big temple entrance gate here. This is Isorpa, a pathing dragon that walks along the Scar. They are on Vishan's Peak, Ring of Scale faction. So even if you are CoV factioned, you could still be KOS to this dragon specifically. Isorpa is kind of a jerk. When you head up to CoV, this is Santalak, the main guard of Temple of Ishan. If Santalak is up, and you're not CoV factioned, then you're not getting in by walking past him. You could hide sneak, but if you aren't a rogue, then your options are to get coughed past Santalak, or or get a harmony from a druid or a ranger. I need a harmony on Sant to get into ToV. It's something somebody would ask on a Quake, hypothetically. So in order to help with all of this, because getting an evac through Siren's Grotto and then crossing 2 zones on foot past a bunch of dangerous monsters is super annoying, what people do is, this is the entrance to ToV, by the way, you click on these pillars to zone in. People will self-bind at ToV, which for casters is trivial, you just cast Bind Affinity on yourself, but for melee, this isn't considered a town, so you're not allowed to do that. But there's a special item called a Locket of Escape. So let me dismiss my map for a second. It looks like this. It has a charge on it that casts Bind Affinity. These items don't drop anymore. They're worth hundreds of thousands of plat. They can be recharged at a vendor for 11,000 plat. If you have a Locket of Escape, then you can equip it like a necklace, target yourself, and cast Bind Affinity, and set your character's bind point, even as a melee, right here at Temple of Ishan, so that a wizard, level 50 plus, can cast Translocate on you, and you can just accept a TL box that sends you to your bind point, and boom, you're at Temple of Ishan, the hardest dungeon in the game. And this is really important for a bunch of special train out tricks that we do throughout Temple of Ishan. So if you're a serious raider, you should get your characters bound at ToV and your melee characters locket bound at ToV in order to facilitate movement, in order to be able to self-gate if you can cast gate and go right back out of ToV, in order to be able to take TL boxes right outside ToV. So locket binding is something you should look for. We do it every couple months whenever we do draft week, which is every 2 months. So we're going to click into Temple of Ishan. Temple of Ishan is a very complex dungeon with a lot of bosses, and especially for a newer player, it's very, very confusing and overwhelming. This is the entrance to Temple of Ishan. Let me pull my map back up. Temple of Ishan looks like this, and we are, come on map, pin. We are here at the bottom. This is the entrance and the safe spot of Temple of Ishan. So you start here. These NPCs don't exist in the normal game. This is weird AIH stuff. And this is the door to the entrance. Through the door to the entrance, you have Picture Room. And we call it that because there are big pictures on the wall, though a lot of people don't really look at them. And here, there are a string of dragons that are on Claws of Ishan faction. So if you're factioned to CoV, the Picture Room is perfectly safe to run through. If you're not factioned to CoV, then you need to be hide sneak as a rogue, or you can't come up here. Through the Picture Room, you reach the hub. The hub is on either side, left, right. There are 2 doors here. More CoV factioned dragons. And then there's this big hub wheel. There's a drop down. You can fall off these little edges here. And if you happen to do that, there are some cubbies that you can get stuck in that lead nowhere. The only way to get up from the drop down is the same ramp we just started on, right by the door back to the picture room. So there's a ramp on both sides here, and this brings you back up to the picture room doors. This is on the south end. Now we're facing north. This is the hub. Random dragons path through here. These are all CoV factioned. This is the north door. And then of course you have the west door. 2 doors means that's picture room again. And then here's east door to halls of testing and Dozakar. So we need to talk about each of these wings one at a time. The west wing of ToV is for LTK, Gosram, and Telcoronar. Gosram and Telcoronar are not as important targets. Gosram can drop a shovel, that's pretty cool. But LTK is a very common target that drops the Sleeper's Tomb key. So you go west through this door, and then here is the drop down. This, you're not allowed to be levitated in Temple of Ishan. And if you have a lev or a DMF, it falls off as soon as you enter the zone. So this drop down is a one-way entrance into west. As soon as you're down here, you're not getting back out. There are no weird clippy tricks to allow you to get out of this. There is one for east, which we'll talk about later. So once you're at drop down, you're now in west until you reach the west exit pad. So you go into west. All of the dragons here in west are on CoV faction. It's kind of a weird, 3-directional path here, and it's very easy to get lost if you don't have a map and you've never been here before. But if you turn right and go north, and turn right again, you go to Gosram. You can fall into these little things and jump back out, not a big deal. This is Gosram, a nice shiny dragon. We had turned left instead of turning right. We could have gone south and headed to Telk. Telk might be the single least valuable dragon to fight. Telk is over here. Hi, Telk. And then if we hadn't done either of those left or right turns, we could have gone 2 different reasonable paths towards LTK. So the original spoke that you start at is here, and you can go straight west, which is what I usually do, or you could go take one left and go the south route, or you could even take a right on this next fork. I wouldn't recommend going all the way up to Gala's Pathway, but in any case, you head west, you turn left a little, you keep heading west, and you can run all the way down to LTK. I would turn left here instead of right, because the right way is very janky. And then you follow this path, you go down this ramp, and this is the center pathway to LTK. LTK is this dragon, who drops the Sleeper's Tomb key as a necklace. Once you run past LTK, there is an exit pad, this little platform. And as soon as you walk up and touch it, boom, you enter Western Wastes, and you're right by the click into ToV again. So that was west ToV. Let's start over. This time we're going to go to east. Doze, halls of testing. So door into the hub. We're going to turn right in order to go east to halls of testing. Alright, right through this door, this is Zem. Zem is on Claws of Ishan faction, and he is the last friendly thing on the way to Dozakar. So, as soon as you pass Zem, you're dealing with dragons that want to kill you, guaranteed. So I am going to, as a rogue, hide sneak. And I'm going to run through, and I'm just going to show you that there's a drop down here. This drop down, just like the west drop down, is intended to make it so that this is a one-way entrance into west. Into east, halls of testing. But it's not actually. You're not supposed to need to jump on P99 if you're not hide sneaking and you have a SO. In any case, there's a way to jump back up here, and it might take a little practice to get it, but that is very possible. So Dozakar is right through this first door. Very, very beginning of this drop down. We fight Dozakar, camp sits here, the clerics are out of line of sight of Dozakar, hail Dozakar, nope, hail Dozakar, yes. So you're out of line of sight of Dozakar, and the melee is running in and punching Dozakar, and then running back out whenever they need to get healed. You stay in this little column here between these bubbles, because it's possible that there are pathing dragons that will see you through the doors on either side of Dozakar's room. So you have to stay in the middle. We jokingly called it Luton's Ladder at one point. You have to stay and make sure you're staying in the very center of the room when you fight Dozakar. Everyone else is hanging out here, casting spells. DB wizards can cast spells and then strafe back out of line of sight to get spot heals and stuff. And you can heal through walls, so you can still reach the tank and heal them while standing here. So this is Dozakar. The rest of East here is Halls of Testing. Halls of Testing is this kind of goofy maze. In order to get out of HOT, and you'd never really do this unless you were a rogue, you run through this way, past Medair, who's usually killed because he's one of the hot minis, and there's an exit pad. Just like behind LTK there's an exit pad, this will bring us back out to Western Wastes. When we raid HOT, we have a Koth mage parked right here, and we Koth people right here until we're ready to fight Medair, if Medair's up, and then we kill Medair, and then HOT, the camp is here, everyone's sitting and chilling here, and then we bring monsters right here into this hallway, so that when they do LOSs, they're not hitting the rest of the raid. The melee comes out and kills them, and then everyone runs back out here. And then the Cone of Shame, the no-no zone, is this LOS cone right here, because this is the hub. And this is North Door. And North Door is the other end of the safe area, where Clausevishan faction allows you to freely walk. Once you go past North Door, there are mobs that you need to be aware of that are dangerous. So what we do is everyone piles up right here on North Door, and they wait for a DA hold or a train out in order to make it safe to run through towards Ishan, is generally the plan. There's also Icky, who you pull from north, and we usually fight Icky at the entrance. But that's a whole separate specific strategy. So, here at North Door, if I hide sneak, you'll notice that there is a door that you can catch line of sight of that's right here. And if you aren't sneaking, these wyverns will see you and kill you. So what we do is we send someone in intentionally who's DA'd with a translocate box, and they sit here in the middle of the room while the wyverns bite them, but they're invulnerable. And then before their DA fades, they take their TL box, sending them back to the beginning of the dungeon. What that did was, it bought everyone else 15, 18 seconds of time to run past this door without a wyvern seeing them. But you'll see how there's this little line of sight here, where if you're not sneaking, the wyvern is going to see you and kill you. So you can't run past North Door without at least being sneaking. And the safest thing to do is to just have a DA hold. So what you do is if you're going to Ishan, you have your DA hold for North Door, and then you run straight up here, and you just hug this right wall, and you go up to this fire pot at the top of this ramp, and you wait right here. And this is a safe spot if you're faction with Clausevishan, because these hatchlings are on Clausevishan. These cubby monsters in front of Arianar are not on Clausevishan faction. They will kill you, but they're too far away from this fire pot. So you don't hang out up here. We used to hang out up here very often. You hang out at the fire pot. It's just safer because it's further away from those guys. Ishan is chilling right here. Ishan can see hide sneak. Hide sneak doesn't work on named monsters. So normally on P99 I'd be dead by now because Ishan would have killed me because hide sneak doesn't work on him. But Ishan's right here, and you're only just barely far enough away from him if you scoot this way to not aggro him. If you happened to go like this and then turn right, you're dead, and you might have trained everybody. So you have to be very careful that you're hugging the right wall when you run up to this Ishan fire pot. We all set up the raid here at the fire pot, and then when we fight Ishan, we stand right here. The healers are standing right here. The main tank is standing on a very specific spot because Ishan is rooted right here. Very specific spot where he can hit Ishan. and still be healed. All of these other drakes are trained out while we fight Ishin through a low HP train out trick. So that's Ishin. Everything north of Ishin starts to be guaranteed KOS. Alright, these whelps, we often have to kill them because we have some non-KOS players that we're coughing up to Ishin. But these whelps are Clausewitian faction. Everything past this is no longer Clausewitian faction. It is all legit KOS. The first dragon up here is Aryanar, and for some reason Aryanar is dead. But Aryanar is a big dragon that sits right here. I want to point out that this Sky Defender can see Hide Sneak. He's only warmly to me because I set my faction to warmly for Guardians of Ishan. But otherwise I'd be dead. Hide Sneak would not work on this Sky Defender. Here's an Onyx Defender. He can't see Hide Sneak. So it varies by mob. The Flurries can absolutely see Hide Sneak and will kill you. So it's not safe to just Hide Sneak run around Inner Ring. Aryanar is the start of the Inner Ring, and you can understand why it's called that. It's a big ring of dragons. Vulak sits in this center house right up here. I don't know why, but you can see his butt sticking through it. Inner Ring has a bunch of bosses. So from Aryanar, going clockwise, there's Vyem, and then there's Koi, and then there's Lady M, and then there's Four-Way. And then on the right side, if we were to keep going, you have Kryzen down in this far pit. You have Daegarn, and there's a ledge above Daegarn that we should talk about. And then you have Feshlak, who is directly to the right of Aryanar. Directly to the right of Aryanar are also what we call the rock mobs, these guys that are hanging out right here. There are some kiting strategies where you have a wizard run in circles while fluxing a monster to make it chase them. And the monsters being kited, it's very dangerous to bring them near the rock mobs. So you need to be aware that when you have a kiting path here on the left, that you don't go too far and accidentally aggro the rock mobs, because they get line of sight of you right over here. I also want to point out that the inner ring is the inner ring over a big floating lava pit, so don't fall down here. Besides going from Aryanar, the other way that we'll approach some inner ring dragons is from Daegarn Ledge. We have a Koth Mage pre-parked up on Daegarn Ledge, and so we're in inner ring, but we're really up high. You'll notice we're very up high above all these drakes. So we will Koth people up onto Daegarn Ledge, and then potentially approach Feshlak if we wanted to go south, or we could go into Kryzen's lair if we wanted to jump north. You want to make sure that if you are on Daegarn Ledge and you're going to jump down somewhere and do something, you don't immediately jump all the way into the lava, because that is bad and would require a corpse summon. This is Vulak at the center of Inner Ring in his own special little lair. There's this bridge that goes north from Vulak to what we call Four-Way. And it's called Four-Way because you can go 4 different ways from it. North of Four-Way, we have Three-Way. And that's because there are only 3 ways to go. You have this ramp up to Trips ramp. You have this ramp up to Doubles ramp. And we call them Trips and Doubles because there are 3 dragons at the end of Trips, and there are 2 dragons at the end of Doubles. We have a Koth Mage parked here in Trips Hallway. Here. This area is safe. However, you'll notice that as soon as you go down here, this area is not safe, because you'll aggro the Trips ramp mobs. And if you go too far over here, it's also not safe, because you'll aggro these worms. So, there are very specific locations in ToV that are safe, and you shouldn't walk around and look at different things. You should realize where everyone else is standing. They're standing there because it's a safe spot. This is Trips. There are 3 bosses to fight here: Sekinar, Zlekzak, and Sevilak. From Trips, you can run down Trips ramp towards Doubles. Doubles is up this way. So this is Doubles ramp. generally speaking, the top of Double's Ramp is safe, although mobs do get trained out sometimes around here. There's a worm over here. There's a drake over here. And now, two things. There's the Double's hallway, if you go up this way, but there's also this little door that leads you to the north exit pad. And just like LTK and Doze, this exit pad brings you out to West Wastes. I don't need to show you, you can believe me. If you go up the Double's hallway, you'll reach Double's where you see Jorliag and Lady Nev. We have a Koth Mage pre-parked in Double's at this back cubby up here. This is out of line of sight of Lady Nev. We can Koth a bunch of people here, and then once we're ready, they can pop down and engage Lady Nev. And that pretty much concludes our tour of the Temple of Ishan. I feel like my next guides are going to be about basic rogue piloting and Vulak Mage, Koth piloting. But hopefully that is a nice overall introductory guide to the key raid areas in Velious that we focus on in castle raiding. So I hope that was helpful, and yeah, have a good one.